Good afternoon, everybody. You're very, very welcome to the Contemporary Music Centre's third in the series of three CPD sessions on online performance. Our first was creating online performances, and that was given by Owen Callery and Sean James Garland. The second was on monetizing, because in CMC we believe the artist must be paid, and so there was no way we were going to have a CPD session that didn't also deal with the issue of the artist being paid. That was given by Nick Roth last week, and we're very honoured today to have Naomi Belshaw beaming in live from the UK, and she's going to do marketing online performances. Naomi has a deep history in marketing and PR. She currently works part-time with WildKat PR, and she's working part-time in order to allow her to develop her own consultancy, Naomi Belshaw Consultancy. So without much further ado, I will hand over to Naomi to tell you a little bit about herself, give a presentation, and then there's plenty of time afterwards for questions and answers, and we do hope you have some. So thank you very much, Naomi.
Hi, thanks for inviting me to do this. It's great to see you all. I see we have quite a select group at the moment today, so that's always quite nice, because then we can have more of a conversation later. But just to say a bit more. So I've worked in contemporary music for maybe 6 or 7 years or longer, but I have quite a varied background actually. So I used to start off working in royalty, so I know all about PRS and MCPS. I then worked in the field of funding, and then in more recent years I've moved over to marketing and PR, because I was really interested, particularly for contemporary music, exactly how that would work, and you know, how do you reach audiences and things like that. So I've been working at WildKat for quite a while, and then in the last few months during lockdown, actually, I decided to start my own consultancy, because particularly with composers and artists as well, I wanted to offer something which was more strategic. So composers particularly, I think, struggle to think about the business aspect of making a career. So I'm kind of built everything together, what I've taken from all the different parts of the industry I've worked in over the last few years, to kind of build a model for how I could work with composers and artists, particularly in contemporary music. So it was really nice for Yvonne and the CMC to invite me to take part in this 3-part thing and do the last part on marketing. So that's why I'm here today. So I'm going to now move over to share screen, see if I can work out how to do it again, and I'll do it from that. And I guess maybe you might want to mull over what I'm talking about first, but if there's any burning questions you have, you could maybe write something in the chat, and maybe Linda can let me know. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I'll try and share screen now. Okay. Okay, how does that look? Does that look all right to everyone?
Perfect.
Great. Okay, so without further ado, so yeah, I'm going to concentrate on marketing online performances. Oh, it won't let me. Ooh, why is it doing that? Let's try. Oh, it won't let me. I see. I'm going to do it that way. So here's an overview of what I'm going to cover today. So for me, because I didn't start off in marketing, I'm always quite keen, because you never know who's in the group, to kind of just briefly discuss what does marketing mean anyway, and how does it relate to composers, artists, or organizations. Then I'm going to look at why marketing a digital stream, and beyond maybe directly just looking at the concert you might be putting online itself, but actually what that means in a marketing sense. Then I'll look at different platforms to market and stream on. I think this might have been covered in a previous session, but I'll give my own slant on it and kind of link it to marketing in those social media platforms. And then I want to look at more of a general idea of marketing principles, or how I would do marketing and advertising linked to digital platforms in order to kind of promote these digital streams, or more about yourself. And then I want to look at marketing in general at the very end. So the fact that you've got these online performances, you actually might want to link that back to what you're doing or your future plans. And I think that's very important right now, not just to be considering an individual concert or series that you're putting online, but how it links to everything else. Okay, does that sound right, everyone? Okay, so we'll get used to this. Right, so first of all, marketing is a way of teaching people why they should choose your product or service over anybody else. So in our world, well, why should they listen to your music more than any other music stream? Why your concert? And you have to do work in order to help audiences understand or consider your performance. So there are many ways that you can do that in, and this slide is taken from other presentations I've done, which kind of look at it in a more general sense in the days where we were able to do live concerts and be there in person as well. But there are all these different avenues that you can look at. So there is advertising. So with that, you can advertise via social media, via your website, via program notes at performances or things that you give out online, through the performances themselves, and even radio airplay. All of those things in a way are advertising something about you as the artist, composer, or the organization that's maybe putting that performance on. There is also to consider as part of marketing what audiences hear about. So, you know, this is where press comes in, and reviews of performances or listings that are out there online, or perhaps if it's more the old style, if it's in newspapers or magazines, are all part of the marketing of an event or a performance as well. And then there's another side to consider, so see it as a whole, and that's kind of what I call customer service. But it's like, if you are a composer particularly, your presence at a concert or even at a live stream, maybe being available for questions and things like that, or perhaps doing an interview, that's an important way of engaging with your audience. Or writing newsletters as an artist or a composer to keep up with people who've maybe been paying attention to what you're doing. And also just general communication, and that's where social media can play a big part as well. And then I also consider another area, which is follow-up care. So yes, you have, in this case, we might have an online performance or a series of online performances, but it doesn't end at the performance. You want to keep your audience, or you want to retain them. So there is everything that you can do via social media or newsletters or other means to continue to communicate with that audience that you've maybe taken in, and keep that conversation going and look beyond that. And that all for me comes under the umbrella of the marketing and you know, building and creating audiences. And essentially it affects someone's decision how you approach all of that, whether they decide to listen in the first place or stay and come back again for future performances, or follow you as an artist, or everything else that comes with that. So I also want to talk about digital streams in the sense, okay, so right, brilliant. In this crazy world, particularly in the last 3 or 4 months, it hasn't been possible to perform live in public, and you can't have audiences in the same room as you. So, you know, digital streaming has become really, really important, but it's almost become more of a marketing tool. So yes, it's very important that we try and monetize as much as possible, but if we are talking contemporary music, that might be at a lower level than, say, in the commercial world for a pop musician. So you want to think about other things that that particular performance or series performances can do for you as well. So it could link to other things that you want to promote, or things that you want to do as an artist or a composer. So that might be linking to CDs that you are also thinking of bringing out, or perhaps your past repertoire of CDs that you have that you would like to sell, or digital repertoire. It can be as a composer, perhaps your past actual pieces that you've written. Perhaps you want to reach new ensembles to potentially perform your music in the future. So through having a concert where your music is performed and that kind of thing, and engaging an audience and linking with them, it might give you access to an audience and link in that way. It could be to do with concert ticketing. Perhaps you want to move from what's been a free online streaming platform and way of doing things to perhaps a closed platform, and therefore monetizing. So you kind of want to cross that boundary, or perhaps you're thinking when live performances come back, you want to kind of increase the potential for concert ticket sales. It could be linking to the next performances. So you gather people in for this particular online stream, and then you want to market and make sure that you collect data so that you can encourage that audience to come to future ones. You can do calls to action which are beyond, again, just viewing the concert. You can do things like asking people to sign up to your mailing list and things like that, and then you can really get a high level engaged audience with what you're doing. You might want to expand the market in terms of the audience maybe that already know you, want to look beyond that. And especially with social media platforms, the way that they are so well engineered for marketing and advertising, you can actually increase the potential audience that comes to see you, because it will target audiences kind of next door to the ones that you already have with the way that their algorithms and things work. You also may want to use it straightforwardly as profile building, and you may just, literally want to increase the page follows on the stream itself, or maybe for your other social media networks. So by having, say, for example, a performance on Facebook, it might also increase your page likes for your artist page or your composer page and that kind of thing. So there's lots of ways, even beyond monetization, that doing an online performance and thinking about the marketing aspect can be really useful. So when I say that as well, I mean, I think I'm saying beyond just organically tweeting and Facebook kind of advertising an event specifically, you can use other tools to actually reach a wider audience to bring them into your world as an artist or composer or organization working in the arts. So what I would say now is, so if I was doing a normal presentation, which was more of an overview of marketing, I would perhaps go into more detail about your more, what I call traditional marketing methods. So bear in mind that the ways you can market an ordinary concert would of course be posters, leaflets, going into your local area and putting them in local shops, maybe offering local deals with restaurants for people to potentially come to those concerts and things like that. And maybe arranging discount codes. Also, there would be advertorial space in newspapers, magazines. There would be PR potentially linked to trying to get yourself into magazines as well to help promote the event or thing you're putting on. But obviously in this space, and with it being a digital performance, I'm now going to look more at the digital platforms and the way that they can interlink, the idea that you are streaming potentially on a platform, how you can use different social media platforms to then also market in advance of that event, or perhaps even after, if you're just trying to get people engaged with you and your music. So if we start with Facebook, just some stats for you. So, you know, it's an absolutely massive platform. It's one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. You know, 2.4 billion active users, 88% of mobile users use Facebook. And, you know, the average person who uses Facebook spends 58 minutes on the platform. So, you know, there's a captive market there to consider. Something else to think about when you're looking at a platform like Facebook is when it comes to an online stream itself, video content is something that they love. So they will promote it even more. So within the platform, if you're putting up a stream, it means that they will help promote that over, say, just an ordinary text message you put up or a picture. And also going beyond that in an advertising sense, which I'll talk about a bit more, if you go into video advertising, so putting up short snippets to help promote the online stream that's coming up or you want more people to see, again, they will promote that content more because they love people scrolling through videos and they know how much people engage with them. And that's kind of the case across quite a few platforms. And I've definitely seen in the last 5 or so years, all social media platforms being that much more interested in video content as a whole. So as well as thinking about the concert performance itself, think about short snippets of videos that you want to share to help market what you want to do. So as I said, it's an advertising platform, so it's a really good one to use for that. One of the clever things with Facebook as well is it has a massive reach because through advertising on it, you actually can reach beyond the platform itself. The way that the advertising is set up means that you can actually reach across the internet and people using apps, and you advertise across there. And there are other platforms that are owned by Facebook, so you can look across. It's seen a dramatic increase in being used. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, there is a phone going off in my office, but I can't actually stop that, so I'll just stop for a second. Someone should pick it up, I hope. Damn it. Okay, let me silence it. Okay. I'm terribly sorry about that. We don't often get calls in the office, but hey, okay, so where was I? It's also, what I'd say is what I call is a higher hit rate percentage. So because of the way you can run ad campaigns and the way that you can target audiences, if you use Business Manager within Facebook, you can pick an audience that may be engaged through maybe an initial video, short advert video that you share, kind of giving them a call to action that perhaps your concert will be happening in 2 or 3 weeks' time. If they engage with that in any way, so maybe they like it, or they click on something, or they click on something to go and see your website where the stream is going to be, or something like that, Facebook can actually gather that data, and you can use it in a campaign to use that audience that have shown that interest and remarket to them to encourage them again to think about that stream coming up. So the way that I would work in WildKat, and we work in WildKat, is we talk to an organization or an artist about what they want to promote, and we organize, say, at least a month or maybe 2-month campaign where we organize exactly how we're going to use adverts and put them out to reach audiences, to gather data, to then be able to retarget and really galvanize that interest and the specific people who want to watch your concert, and almost remind them, as it were, that they maybe saw it once and it was something they were so interested in, they will be re-shown something again to remind them, oh, this is a concert maybe I want to see. So it's a very, very clever tool in that sense. And then the other thing I want to mention, so switching suddenly to a different platform, Instagram is actually owned by Facebook. You probably already know that, but it highly targets, and it's very interested in video content as well, and visual content with 500 million daily stories, 1 billion users. Again, it's a huge platform that you can use. So it might not be the platform that you necessarily want to stream your online performance on, but you will probably want to target it in a marketing sense. And again, video content being quite key and interesting, you can share snippets of the upcoming concert or maybe brief interviews with the people involved and put it on these platforms to get people interested and things like that. So one of the things that I want to discuss, and I might come backwards and forwards between, is the idea of social media platforms and, I suppose, strict marketing and advertising versus organic use. So working with big label companies and distributors, they often give advice about marketing on various social media platforms, and they talk about how you post and you engage with it. So obviously, as artists and composers, perhaps mostly, or in organizations who want to engage with your public and your audiences, you have the whole use of social media with just putting out tweets out there or putting out Facebook content and share things. And you have to be very careful when you do that organically, that it is mostly engaging material that really connects with audiences. So they often say it's 70% organic and 30% promotional. So for example, if you have a CD to sell or something like that, you don't want to be saying 70% of the time, oh, you must buy my CD, it's available on Amazon, or blah, 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 or please download it from Spotify, because you will lose your audience. In all of these platforms, from Instagram to Facebook to Twitter, audiences like to get to know a person. So however you want to do that, and maybe you want a private self and say your artist self, or you're an organization and you want to put forward a certain message, you want to think very carefully almost about your brand and how you put yourself forward, but in a way that is unique and you. So it doesn't come across as you're trying to sell something all the time. It actually comes across as someone that, an individual person would be interested in getting to know because of your thoughts or what you like, or something that again engage with. And then they also are interested in you as an artist. So they, as I said, they often talk about this 70-30 split. But then on top of that, when we're talking about advertising campaigns, that kind of appears as content on top of that. So you kind of want to make sure that if you are a big user, say, of Twitter or of Facebook, that your own profile content is mostly something your audiences really engage in, so that when they see adverts about your events, they are engaged with those adverts and don't see it as something that maybe is impersonal. But if they are engaged with you already as an artist, organization, or composer, and then they see an advert for a concert that is about to happen online, they will probably engage better. That makes sense. I think, yeah, the other thing I want to mention, which I've kind of covered already, is the fact that Instagram is so well integrated with Facebook. So I think what is nice to talk about next is really advertising in this platform. And I'll probably say more about this platform than the other, because I feel across YouTube and other platforms, there are similar ways of doing it, but Facebook is a key one which can kind of get you into the mindset of how it all works. So if you take Facebook and something like, Facebook Business Manager, if you sign up to that, it allows you to control adverts and marketing across 3 different areas. So first of all, on the Facebook site itself, and content will appear in different areas, but then all across Instagram, and also across a third platform called Audience Network, which is essentially a tool they use to basically be able to tap into apps that people are using, across mobile phones and tablets and everywhere else. And as they are searching for apps or using apps with adverts, an advert of your event might come up. So again, thinking about Facebook, I'm guessing here, but I'm wondering, some people might use Facebook in terms of marketing your streaming events already. And they have a very useful way of just doing something which is called boosting a post. And it's very easy to access, and you spend a small amount of money and you can boost it, and it comes up in people's feeds again, and you can pick up more information. But it's actually quite a crude way of doing it, and you actually don't gather as much information or are able to target as cleverly as using Facebook Manager. Now, Facebook Manager, if you really want to look into it, does take a little bit to get your head around, and there are online courses you can follow, but you have to bear in mind that a lot of them are about selling, like how you set up your shoe shop online, or selling clothes. So the courses out there aren't designed for the arts sector, but if you think about it carefully and what your goal is, you can learn how to use it to really be able to get more and build more of an audience through that network. Because if you use that network of the Business Manager, it means that the adverts will be shared across the news feeds, in-stream videos, on the right column of Facebook, in the Messenger as well. So Facebook Messenger will appear there, Facebook Stories, it'll appear in Instagram feeds, Insta Stories, it'll appear on mobile apps, mobile websites, instant articles. So it'll cross a huge portion of the web. And also it's very tailorable. So you can decide where you don't want it to be. So it's not that it has to appear in all those places, but you can actually target specific places. So just to kind of put that pictorially, so yeah, on Facebook itself, so it appears in all the different areas, or as you're scrolling down on Facebook itself, you'll often see those videos with the kind of crossed out sign, but it'll start playing immediately. So if you have something exciting there for people to see, they might stop and have a little look. And if you give a quick call to action of what you want them to do, then you can capture them. But I'll talk a bit more about that later. Here we go, an example of where it appears across the Instagram world, social media network. So again, it's all managed through Facebook Manager, but you can access and put adverts and little snippets of videos to share something right across this platform as well. And here's a little bit of how it appears kind of across apps and stuff like that. So, you could put a call to action of where the stream is if it's already happened, for example. So you could lead people straight to where the stream is, or maybe it's your website, or perhaps, where they could buy albums, or it could be signing up to your newsletter. So there's lots of potential. Okay, so then moving on to another huge platform, YouTube. So 2 billion active users, number of videos watched per day is 5 billion. From the point of view of streaming content, it's a very, very valuable tool. And I know many people who just listen to music on YouTube these days and don't even engage with some of the streaming platforms. So it's the internet population, 95% of the internet population use this platform. So as a place to actually stream your concert, it's an interesting platform to use. In terms of thinking about it in a broader sense, you have to make sure that alongside, maybe if you're going to use this as the main platform to promote yourself, for example, by putting a series of concert events and things like that, you might want to consider what you put around those events. So say this is your main platform, I think it would not be enough to just put on the concert streams. If you want your audience to be engaged with and subscribe to your YouTube channel if you're going to do it that way. You also want to create other engaging, consistent, creative content like interviews, behind the scenes looks, and other things that will link to the concert performances to keep people driving to this particular space. And then you can use things like the live streaming element to be able to see live engagement with your music and the performances and kind of get more of a buzz around it. But there is a danger as well. So what I would say is, if you don't use YouTube a lot to promote yourself as an artist, composer, or whatever, it might not be the best idea to suddenly create something which is only really in this platform and then try and market it across other platforms and get people to come to YouTube. So for example, because you have to imagine Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, they're all different companies, and they all hate each other. So for example, if you decide to put a link to a YouTube video in a tweet or on Facebook, they will not promote that as much as in-house video content on their platform. So you might find they actually hide it slightly and you get less cross posting or linking through from that. So it would almost be better to create something where everyone links through to your YouTube channel or space by you actually creating an embed within your website or something like that. So it's a kind of a safe space where it could link through to where you want to host it in reality, but it means that it will be an area that other platforms won't be kind of almost trying to hide in the same way. And then there are other things that I'll talk about in a bit, which you can do link to your website and things like that, which also allow you to gather more data about people who are engaging with the adverts or the content they see on those social media platforms that you are, putting your content on. I'll talk about that later. So just looking very briefly at the platform YouTube, there are so many different places that you can put ads as well. So this is going beyond just the video itself. You can advertise in YouTube. So for example, you've probably seen this, but you can put ads along the bottom of the video itself. So what can be quite interesting here is, so someone goes onto YouTube, they decide they want to watch maybe a DG artist or something like that playing some Mozart, and if you have the gathered data about classical audiences from your own audiences and things like that, it will actually then be targeting DG artists as well, potentially, because they're like of classical music, and your video could potentially either be promoted at the bottom of the video there if you decide to go for a bump an overlay style ad. If you go for a bumper ad, it could be a 15-second clip at the start of a YouTube video that someone's planning on watching, or it could be a sponsored little advert on the side, or there is also I think it's called in-stream content, where I've seen adverts where someone loads up a video that they want to watch because that's what they decide wants to watch. It's the data behind the scene has noted, oh, this audience would also be interested in your concert, and it actually shares an ad where you can actually share the entire concert if you like. So there are some really interesting ways you can use the platform, and if they don't click skip ad, you could actually get them to watch the whole concert just through an advert. And it's interesting, what I would say, when you look at digital advertising versus advertising perhaps in classical music magazines like Gramophone or BBC Music Magazine and things like that, is that you will spend maybe anywhere between £700 to several £1,000s for an advert space in there, and you could spend just a few £100s very carefully tailored to try and reach target audiences to get, I'd say, the same kind of engagement or kind of viewership that you might want. So it's an interesting space. Looking again briefly, Twitter is another platform with many daily posts and a large number of people using it to kind of share and discover new things, which is quite useful. I mean, on here, I would say, you have to be careful. You can only share very small amounts of videos. So I think it's 2 minutes, 20 seconds tops. So this would not be a platform, obviously, to put the actual performance on. But again, it might be worth sharing a few videos of the performance coming up. And then there is that, again, thing I was talking about earlier of that difference between engaging with your audiences with organic content and you as an artist, say, or a composer, versus promoting stuff. So you want to keep that in line with how you tweet. And yeah, if you look at the online suggestions, they suggest you plan tweets 3 to 5 times a day to keep in touch with your audience. I think maybe that's not always the case. I certainly tweet a lot less, but I find I have quite an engaged audience. So I think it's more important about what you share on Twitter being relevant to your audience so you don't lose them. And I think, again, if you were spending the whole time promoting things, you would probably start to find your audience did start to leave because they weren't seeing anything about you particularly, or anything that kind of, I suppose, would link to your brand. Again, I give a little warning here, don't link to other social media platforms, because you have to bear in mind how much they all dislike each other, and therefore will deliberately not link to content on other platforms if they see that's what you're trying to do. So it's always better to think about your website, or maybe if you're hosting your things through someone else's website, linking to that and kind of getting the audience to engage that way and clicking through to websites, things like that. Just to give you a few examples of how you can advertise on Twitter, you have really mostly 2 ways of doing it. So there is setting up a promoted account that will appear on the left-hand side, suggesting that's maybe somebody you want to follow. Then you also have tweets that will appear that will be a promoted tweet. And you'll always notice there's a little promoted sign at the bottom of that. Then I can't quite see it because we're all in the way a little bit, but there's also a thing called a lead gen card, which will appear like a tweet in your feed, but there will be a call to action like click on my website here or go to live stream here. But it's a nice way of something that looks like almost user-generated content, but actually is more of an advert that might engage somebody if they were interested in your concert, and put it in that way. Now I'm going to mention a couple other platforms. Again, I think they may have been mentioned before. I'm not really going to talk about advertising or anything in this sense, but just depending on how entrepreneurial you are or experimental you want to be as an artist, I feel like the next 2 platforms are ones that have not really been used by classical artists yet. Now, that's not to say, therefore, it's going to make it easy, but we have to bear in mind that there are huge audiences on these platforms, and it would be quite interesting to even experiment and see what happens. So I'm sure people have heard of TikTok. It's become very, very popular, especially over lockdown. And people are, mostly sharing crazy videos or watching DIY or watching cats doing crazy things and funny videos like that. But, you know, there are influencers on the platform, and if you look at some of the stats, so yeah, there are things like, you know, it's now one of the biggest apps in the world and the most downloaded app this year. And if you look at some of the old information about it, it does say that the audience of that platform tends to be a much younger audience of 16 to 24, but that is rapidly changing. It's become so popular, a much, much older audience is starting to join that platform. And also some of the influencers are a much older age demographic. So it's not something to be ignored, it's maybe something to be experimented with. And, you know, as I partly see streaming and online performances and sharing your music as part of this, something that you want to experiment with as well as monetize, it might be interesting to choose a platform like this. And if you're one of the first artists to do it and get audiences interested, you might be able to forge a way to be able to monetize it before anyone else gets there. So it's an interesting one to think about. Yeah, and it's important to note that the platform sees itself as a platform for all ages, and they are trying to grow that audience across the generations. And there are no rules. So I just thought I wanted to mention it to you. You know, I'm not going into details of how you maybe advertise on there and things like that, but just as a maybe platform to use and share could be interesting. In a similar vein, yes, I know it's the gaming world, but you know, Twitch has been around for a few years, and I know from a licensing sense from PRS that there have been real struggles for maybe monetizing some content and making sure that royalties get paid. But within the platform itself, I've been on a few times. Of course, people can watch Fortnite and things like that, and are avid gamers and things like that. But there are dedicated channels, and I mean seriously dedicated channels, to people playing piano for like 6 hours a day, and then they will be talking while they're playing the piano, asking, like, I'd say, you know, hundreds of people who are logged on chatting alongside the video. You can see them playing, saying, oh, could you play this next, or what are you doing this evening, or you're up late. And it's a real conversational platform. But artists, and definitely I'd say in, you know, pop music and singer-songwriters, are definitely starting to use, and DJs and electronic artists are already using, to actually put on events in there and engage with audiences. And then people sometimes, you can sign up to pay individual artists within that. So you could set up your own channel and potentially monetize it. So again, what I wanted to say here is, I feel like, you know, it's an untapped platform for classical. So I'm not saying it'll work, it might not, but for any of you, if there are any of you out there who are thinking, wow, I want to try something, just to try something out, why not give it a go? So, you know, there is the possibility to host concerts. You can chat with your audience and have that direct link. It can be monetized through sponsorship as well, and working with brands. And again, you know, because it's an untapped platform, and if you kind of forge ahead and create something that gets a little bit of traction, you may be approached by brands and things like that for your content, and they might want to sponsor you if you can, you know, get some traction. And so that's why it's really interesting. And, you know, they have 13,000 broadcasters who are now part of its partnership program. So they really want to help the artists who appear on there, or the avid gamers who also like to share on there as well. But yeah, just a very interesting place. And yeah, as I said, some musicians have already realized that the platform isn't just about gaming. So again, one to look out for. And I've been talking about it maybe for a year or two or more, and, you know, with my colleagues, and I still feel like no one has really tapped into it. So just linking back to the idea of marketing your online streams. So email newsletters, as you are mostly artists and composers and things like that, obviously it makes complete sense that you would promote the stream that you're doing and market it, in a sense, through newsletters that you might already send the audience that are aware of you. So you could, and if you don't already have a newsletter, that might be something that might be worth considering, especially if you're going to produce a series of online performances, because you could do that kind of back and forward of kind of increasing an audience through social media and getting people to watch your streams, but then giving people a call to action after having engaged with your performance to then sign up to your newsletter to find out about more. And that might be a way that they can then find out about how you might be doing live performances in the future, or albums that you might be releasing, or it might be about when your next performance is going to be, or what you're doing as a composer. But you're kind of linking up the two, a kind of more old style thing. But again, a newsletter is really good in a sense that it can really engage with your audience and be personal, and you can write it in your own way, in your own style, and an audience really feels they're getting something directly from you, rather than it just being promotional. Yeah. So then I kind of wanted, so I kind of, you know, loosely talked about all these platforms and the fact that you can use advertising in some of them, and how that can be really useful. But I guess you want to think about, and I think you touched on at the beginning, but when you've put, okay, so you've been in lockdown, or maybe you've been thinking about it for a while because we've moved to the digital world anyway, and you have an online performance or a series of performances that you want to promote and that you want to use to put out there as an artist, to promote yourself, or just to have that performance opportunity, or have your music out there. But you want to think where you have it, or like whichever platform you decide to put it on, you actually want to think, well, what is my goal out of this? Is it just to get more people to like it, so I can say, oh, I've had 20,000 views on that particular video, or 20,000 likes, or 20 likes, 30 likes, and or is it beyond that? Is it actually monetizing? So therefore you'll want to drive up the number of views, because if you get the right number of views, that might lead to monetizing the event, or you know, things like that. You also want to think about, is it about increasing awareness? So yes, okay, monetization level will not be at a point where you can really break even, perhaps as an artist, but by promoting this particular online stream, it will really help raise your profile, which then might help with future engagements or how you're seen across the industry. I can definitely tell you from a point of view of being a funder once, that when you're looking at applications from different people applying for funding. As an artist or a composer particularly, they're looking at your social media likes and engagement. So if you have videos that have thousands and thousands of views, or you have 1,000 Instagram followers, or that kind of thing, it really makes them see you as an artist who is really on the way to, making your career or worth funding at this point. So, there are lots of reasons why you might want to increase that engagement, increase likes or engagement. You might want to see it as a data gathering exercise, because as I've mentioned before, with these online platforms, they are all cleverly designed to be gathering data about the people who are engaging with your content. So if you learn to use the statistics behind the scenes, you can learn so much about who is engaging with your music, and therefore have an idea of how you might target them in future, what kind of content they'll be interested in, but also use those platforms to target beyond your already captured audience, to actually capture an audience that is surrounding it, and that the platforms can work out, oh, we think this audience would also be interested because they also like classical music, for example. So some of the things that I think about when I'm thinking about marketing, and say if you're thinking about running a campaign or something, I'm going to call it that, that's what we would call it in WildKat, and you are trying to make sure that your online performance isn't just out there and isn't just going to sit there, and maybe, and you want to do more than just tweet every now and then, oh, by the way, have you seen my wonderful online performance that I put on 2 weeks ago? You want to do a bit more than that. You want to think about marketing as a whole, and I've been told once before that in order for someone to actually pay attention and actually carry out an action, which might be like buying a piece of clothing, watching something on TV, or seeing an online performance, they need to engage with something that reminds them about it at least 3 times. So in the general world, I'm going to call this the general world of trying to market yourself, I would see that as a case. So you make sure it's an online listing. So someone comes across it when they're online and they're looking at what concerts they want to look at. It's listed in there amongst concerts you might want to see. You manage to get it into the Times or something like that. Maybe you're an up-and-coming artist and they talk about this concert series you're putting on, or maybe you're an organization that have put on this series during lockdown and it's really pioneering. If you get that bit of a mention, an audience will go, oh, it'll be, they'll kind of hear about it somewhere in the back of the mind. But then if you add on top of that something like an ad campaign on Facebook, and the same audience person happens to be someone who follows a lot of classical music on Facebook and has linked up to the right things, it may well be then you can also target an advert at them, and that will be the 3rd time to remind that person, oh yes, I remember seeing something about this online concert. Oh yes, it's actually happening next week. Or maybe I'll click on the website and find out more about that. And so you kind of gather them to take that more invested effort and actually consider it like consciously. And there is a little bit of that goes on in marketing. So you also want to, as I said before, think about your goal. So is it that you want people to like the online stream? Is it that you want people to actually go back to your website so you can gather more data and get more people to sign up to your newsletter? And think about that. So if you're going to put a campaign together, also think about what you're trying to get to at the end, and then build your ideas around that. You want to think about what your audience likes as well. So, are they people, so they're people who like classical music, do they tend to be family groups with the kind of music that you put together, or the kind of events you put together? Are they people who like to normally go to the pub and drink and things like that? So there could be different aspects you can think about. What kind of newspapers do they read? That kind of thing that you could help build in a marketing campaign to decide where you're trying to promote your event and market it in order to reach the audience that will potentially engage. With an advert or a way you market itself, you also want to think about the messaging. You want it to be very, very clear what you're asking them to do. When it comes to online videos and things like that, people have a very, very short attention span. So if we are talking about that scrolling line through Facebook or something like that, and they come across a video, which will of course be silent, you want something written, of course, which tells them immediately what it's about, maybe why they should continue listening, maybe telling them to switch on the sound, and something that visually is quite arresting in some way, and you want to play around with that. And then all linked to this social media idea, and again, what you can do if you kind of, as I would call it, plan a campaign, is you want to think about the data. So you maybe want to do the campaign in stages, so you can gather more and more data as you go along and are able to target even more who you would like to potentially be at your event, and make sure that it's so honed that a huge number of people who maybe look at the content actually then do something to make sure they get to the live performance itself. So data is really key. So looking at that, you want to do micro-targeting, it's called. So, you know, you want to think about things like this. You want to make sure, and this is why things like Facebook Business Manager is so useful, is you want to make sure if you're trying to target, say, for example, dog food, you don't want to be targeting cat food owners. They're not going to pay attention to that, are they? So, you know, you want to make sure that, you know, if you are someone who specializes in early music, you're not going to be targeting the contemporary modern classical music scene, because there might not be a crossover, or there's potentially less of a crossover, or someone, you know, see, this is what platforms like YouTube, platforms like Facebook are able to do. They already gather this data about people because of how they use the online world. I mean, it's kind of scary in a sense, because it means they're gathering data about it all the time, but it means as a marketing tool, it makes it very smart in helping you reach an audience that potentially would really engage with your music. So behind the scenes of these platforms, you are able to list interests and things like that. So you're able to kind of list things like classical music, or if I give an example of a campaign I worked on last year, it was with the military wives choirs. So through a Facebook campaign, we were able to target people who are interested in the military, people who are interested in families and women and choral singing, and all those different areas, and we're able to target that information. What you can also do, as I said, if you kind of treat it as a campaign and not just putting out a single advert, is you can learn the behavior of what they do and what they like. So, for example, the way I would run a campaign on a platform like Facebook is I would first of all put together 1 or 2 videos, very short videos, of the thing that I want to promote. So say it's a concert, a live concert, and I would put together 2 videos of content that link to that particular group ensemble who are going to be performing. So let's say the military wives choirs, and ask them for past video content to put together. And then I would try 2 different adverts at the same time. So A/B testing. So what that would mean is, okay, I'm going to put out 1 video and say it's all about come and support us, come and watch our online stream of a concert with the military wives choir. Okay. Then the second one would be come and listen to some fabulous music. This is the, you know, best choral music ever, really high quality. We are the military wives choir. And you're trying to get that across in 15 seconds. And so you put together something visually. I think we did something which was all about camaraderie and alluding to the fact that they are from the military. So there were pictures of things like that. And the other one was much more about the singing aspect and the fact they were working with a well-known soprano in one of their performances. So it was concentrating on the music. And we ran those 2 adverts across various different platforms. So I'd say we mostly concentrated on Instagram, Facebook, for about a month. And then we were able to gather data about how people engaged with those 2 adverts. So what we were able to gather was every time someone either watched the video for more than 3 seconds, we were able to gather whether people engaged and liked or loved it or shared it. And we also put a call to action, which was obviously about the concert that was going to happen later. So people are also able to click on the advert, and then it took them through to the website. So during that month, we were able to gather all that information. Okay, so that gave us a really useful idea of, out of the audiences that we selected that liked classical music, liked the military, were, as it was a live concert, we're in a 50-kilometre radius of London, example, we were then able to say, okay, so of that huge number of 20, 30,000 people we targeted, 10,000 engaged. And so then what we would then do is go to a second part of the campaign, which we would call retargeting. I think I have I think I've messed up my order, I apologize. But yeah, I think it's retargeting. I think I've taken that slide out. So with the retargeting, you then create a second advert. So you've done your A/B testing. You also, what I forgot to mention, is you also can gather which one people engage with more. And what we found is people actually weren't so interested in the musical aspect advert in that instance. They were more interested in the family idea and it being linked to the military and everything else. So we thought, okay, great. So we want the next advert to be more in that direction because that's what people are really engaging with and think of when they're thinking of this organization and potentially coming to the concert. So then we took all the people who engaged with both of the original adverts and retargeted them with a new advert, which this time was the call to action to go and buy tickets. So there was a lot of work that went in, this is why I'm calling it a campaign, to really try and, what I'm saying here, micro-target who you think will want to go to your event or find those people who want to and make sure, essentially, they don't forget they really are front and center of the mind. And in that Military Wives Choirs concert, in the weeks running up to the concert, we then took those retargeted audiences of people who'd watched the video, people who had liked it and things like that. And we maybe did a bit more to get more audiences in that were like them. And then we said, look, buy tickets here. Oh, it's a week away, 25% off. And we offered the other incentives, a kind of marketing idea as well. Thinking, oh, well, I was kind of interested. Oh, now it's 25% off. Maybe I will go and actually look at the website and go to Wigmore Hall and have a look. But it's really trying to galvanize that. So you can work in a very clever way. And I'm going to talk about it in even more detail now to maybe confuse you. So I talked about that remarketing thing. So as I said, it was all about engaging people at the start. And I've talked about people seeing things in different ways. One of the reasons this works, or the way that people gather this data, it's kind of called something slightly different with every platform, but it's called essentially a tracking pixel. So it will engage, and I think you might have a slightly different code with every different platform, or it works in a slightly different way. But essentially, say you have your own website, it's possible to set up in the background a tracking pixel on your website that will link to, for example, Facebook. So that will mean if you run a Facebook campaign on using advertising and things like that, the engagement you see and the clicks through to your website, it makes sure that it all links up and the data is gathered. Or even so, if people go to your website via other means, they still link to your Facebook, and you can therefore target them to remind them about the event. So that is the whole remarketing idea. And taking that a stage further, I don't know the size of organizations or how all you guys work, but if you took a bigger event, or you were working with an artist coming in to work with you, or several artists, is you can make sure that if they have their own website, that their website is also linked to your Facebook manager account. Or if you were working with a big, so say for example, we work with Wigmore Hall, we asked permission to get access to link to their code. So we don't know their code, but we linked to their website. So it meant that everyone who liked Wigmore Hall and generally classical concerts, we were able to use that data to encourage them to come to a concert that we were promoting. I hope that makes sense. I'm getting into a lot of technical speak here, but the idea is the more you can connect with other websites and things like that and use the tracking that exists, the more that you can gather more audiences that potentially like your stuff. And the other thing I should say about this clever tracking system, firstly, it's what they ask about when they say accept cookies. That's one of the things that you're accepting when you're accepting cookies on a website. It's the fact that they are going to track you. And from the point of view of, say, someone has seen an advert or seen something which is about your concert and then goes to your website, you will be able to gather information about them having engaged with your website. And it means next time they go to Instagram or Facebook, that's why they'll see an advert, because they've already been captured. I call it, they've been put in the basket. They've been captured and put in a basket as an potentially interested audience member. So when they go back to a platform just to be scrolling about anything, the platform knows, oh, well, this is someone who was interested in that concert. I will, at some random point, algorithmically just say, hey, don't forget about this concert. Oh, and here's the new advert. And oh, it's going to be on next week. So it all cleverly links like that. So yeah, so that's the pixel thing I was talking about. One of the interesting things as well, as I said before, you know, some of the details of how you use these platforms and how you set up the ad campaigns, you'll need to watch tutorials on, because it does get quite complex. And it's one of the things that WildKat have really been building the last 2 or 3 years, because there isn't really an arts specialist that kind of works on social media platforms and using it for arts organizations and artists. So we've been deliberately building that. So one of the things that is quite individual to us and really useful, that might be more difficult if you're an individual artist, something like that, is we, with our account managements that we have on YouTube and things like that, have gathered a lot of data over a long period of time about audiences in general. Because we specialize in classical music and performing arts, it means that we've gathered data from so many different campaigns linked to classical music that we are able to still use some of that information for new events that we put on. So as an individual on your own, it's going to take longer to target and reach a larger audience than if you work with an organization that's already been doing it for a long time. But on the other hand, if you're going to put on an event in partnership with a big performance venue or something that already has its ready-made audience via its website, there are things you can do as a small artist, asking politely to be able to link up in these digital ways that will really help you link to these audiences. In another, I suppose, slightly boring sense, just because it's technical information, with these kind of tracking pixels and things like that, it only stores the information actually for 90 days. Say, if the pixel is linked to, say, you just tweeting about something and it's text related, or just an ordinary post on Facebook. But if it's video content, you actually get to keep that data for a year. But there are regulations on how long you can keep it. And what I should say is, nothing is ever truly visible, because obviously there is still data protection. So it's all just data about audience type, really. And the other thing I guess I didn't quite mention, and again, it's kind of maybe difficult to conceptualize, is, okay, so for example, we worked with Classic FM at one point on a campaign, and we asked whether we could share their data because we were working with them, or I should say we were working with a major choir group who have a massive following on Classic FM. So Voces 8, they're really quite big and they're a big audience for them. So working with us, they were very happy to share their data and work, you know, in collaboration on that. But what it meant was, for that campaign and for other campaigns, is we were able to capture that data of audience type and be able to share other classical events we had. And the thing is, you can also say to Facebook or the equivalent, I would like to capture a look-alike audience. So if you actually look behind the scenes of these platforms that say, would you like to also choose a look-alike audience? And that is where I'm talking about people who haven't already engaged with a particular choir artist or something like that. You can actually reach people who like that kind of thing, the kind of audience that like to go to Wigmore Hall, the kind of audience that listens to Classic FM or Radio 3, and encourage them to view your content in an ad sense. And then of course it's still up to them whether they engage or not, but obviously it can potentially massively increase who you're reaching via the web. So it's quite fascinating in that sense. So again, thinking about the practical nature of all this kind of thing. So I keep going on about videos. Obviously there are some places where you advertise and it's more about like just visual banners and things like that. But video is definitely king. And in platforms like Facebook and Instagram, you want to think about where it's going to be shown. So you want to create different versions of videos that are in certain different parameters. So whether it's a square version, they'll fit certain kind of windows if you want to promote it in certain areas, and landscape ones for other platforms and other spaces for advertising. So you want to think in those senses. You will want to think it's important, as I said before, to understand that video does engage more people. So if you can in any way, even if it's old video content or a tiny bit of what you're about to stream, just a sneak peek, it's really worth putting that time in for a 10, 15 second snapshot view of what you're trying to promote. You want to then think about what your call to action is going to be. Is it about the promotion of the concert itself? Is it about signing up to your website? Is it going to find out more about you? There's lots to think about. It's also that practical thing of making sure this thing called Pixel is actually installed on your website. Because without that, you won't be able to pick up any of this information and be able to use the data to retarget or market in any sense, or for future things that you might want to do. So it's really important to do that.
Naomi, are we kind of coming towards the end? I'm just concerned people may have been
Yeah.
full of questions.
Sorry. Yeah, I think I've just got a few more points. So I mean, it is a massively complex thing to get some of your head around. But
Sure.
I think, the last thing to just say is I kind of feel like, as I've probably mentioned before, that I think you should always think about this online performances you're putting on as part of a larger part of marketing. So I kind of feel like if you are marketing this event and you are potentially building a profile, monetizing, it's got to sit amongst the wider picture of your brand, essentially. I know some people might hate that word, but just how you come across. So therefore, you want to make sure that you are sharing a website that, fits what you think really is you or your organization and what you're sharing, also through your performances. You want to think about newsletters. You want to think about PR to go along with that. So, getting time on radio, getting a chance to do interviews, or getting features to also promote yourself. And you also want to think about your organic link with social media, as well as what I've been talking about with advertising a little bit. And then beyond that, I know things are difficult right now and everyone pretty much is online, but you also want to think about the networks that you want to build in the background as well. And that is also part of what I would see as marketing yourself, thinking very carefully about, either if you're a composer, groups and organizations and venues or streaming platforms that really link to you as a composer, or if you're an artist, similar way, composers that write in your way, or music that really speaks of you. But you want everything to kind of link up, because I feel like marketing and branding go hand in hand and kind of create that image people see of you, which also links to audience engagement. So I think that was it. I was just going to share some case studies, but I think I kind of talked about them along the way, really.
Thank you very much, Naomi. That was a real tour de force of all the way across the spectrum. You will be sharing those slides with me, and I can send them to the people. So that's very important that people have something that they can go back over and refer to. So getting very nice comments here from everybody who's listening, Naomi, and no big surprise. But Rachel had a specific question that she wanted to put forward. And Rachel, do you want to?
Oh, yeah. Just sorry, I'm probably going over old ground. What you probably said this is just to confirm. Where's my question? Sorry.
You said
look it up again. Let's see. It was just to confirm. So if you have like for example, I have a 40-minute concert video, and it's on YouTube. It's on my own YouTube channel, and it's on my Trio YouTube channel. So, but you're saying that because they compete together, there's no point in advertising the YouTube channel on the Facebook or Instagram. So basically, that's going to be embedded on my website, and so you kind of maybe could advertise. You wouldn't mention YouTube at all in the advertisement. Say, go to this website to see this video.
I think it would be like, I think it would be maybe like, if you haven't seen my online concert that was put on 2 weeks ago, please click here to access it via my website. So then it'll link to the performance itself.
Oh, yeah.
But then you could also do things like, and maybe this was in one of my last slides I didn't quite get to with my examples. So we've been working with Rydale Festival for the last few weeks. And so we were directing everybody to the website in advance, using Facebook maybe as the main platform to advertise that the online streaming festival was going to happen. So in advance of the event, we say, oh, please come and click here for this event, which is happening at this time, and galvanise people to go to the website. But it's really on YouTube. So then after the event has happened and they're still all available on YouTube, we've actually run a small ad campaign in YouTube itself to gain more views in YouTube. So we've been using some of the different methods, and I think one of the ones they're using is this advert where it's basically in front of other classical videos that someone might look for and upload. They've gathered the information about classical audiences and linked to, I think there are some DG artists in Rydale, so they've been able to link to the DG platform. So if someone looked up a DG artist to look at their music video, Rydale actually comes up on one of the streams as an advert before the video. And if you didn't click on it, you would actually end up watching the 40-minute video of Rydale if you wanted to. So there are some adverts that you can do which actually link directly to your performance. So I do know that some people use that kind of method even after a performance to increase those views of your. So
is it very expensive, the YouTube ads? Or are they kind of the same range?
If I go back I'm just going to go back a second to my notes. I think I wrote down some notes to myself. Only a second. I think with the Rydale one. So I think, you know, I guess this is across the festival. There were maybe 5 or 6 concerts that they streamed. We're reaching towards 22,000 streams for those concerts. I think, oh no, I think maybe I'm getting confused. I'm going to use a different example, but we're using another Google ad campaign. I think we were trying to get a different artist traction on Spotify. So we did a whole load of YouTube ads in order to promote and encourage people, a call to action to go to Spotify to listen to this unknown artist and a track. Again, it got to nearly about 22,000 streams on Spotify, but a lot of that was done through only spending £340 on YouTube. So advertising in YouTube, giving that people a call to action, it was only £340. I think we did a playlist push as well, which was 200, but that was like, you know, just over 500 spend. And considering you would spend probably way more than that trying to, in the old school way, advertise in a magazine. Some people, you know, can spend £1,000 or so for like a page ad or something to promote their festival. It really does make sense. And with platforms like Facebook, for example, you can really set quite low values on how much you're going to spend, like maybe just £200 over 2 months. And it will work out how much to algorithmically share your advert depending on how much you're able to spend. But it's usually within the hundreds, not thousands, compared to some other more traditional methods of how much it might cost to create posters, all sorts. So yeah, it's quite interesting. It's just the slightly trickier nature of getting to grips with the platforms and how you set up the individual parts, but it can really be worth the effort.
Naomi, could you take away the screen share now so everybody can see?
Yes.
And then I could see if people have hands up or anything. Hi guys. We've had some people join us and some people have had to leave. I saw one thing, Naomi, you were talking about Twitter and you had a thing called Go Live via Periscope. And I hear you talking about that and I didn't know what it was.
I think it's not one I use a lot, but it's another platform, Periscope, where people can kind of live stream events or concerts and things like that. So I think Twitter has set up a way to link to that. So it's like a video platform that will allow. But yeah, I think we not got as much traction with that ourselves at WildKat, and we've seen it. I've seen it more for conference events and things like that, potentially more than. I feel that people are more using like Facebook Live or Facebook streaming or Premiere on YouTube and that kind of thing, or via their website, that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Karima has a question, but I think Karima's mic wasn't working earlier. Karima, has your mic started working now?
I think it's working. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Great. Just a quick question. You said, Naomi, that on Twitter you recommend 70% personal tweets and 30% promotional. Does that also apply? I don't use Twitter. Does that also apply to Instagram and Facebook posts?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the difficult thing with all social media platforms, is it's really about personal engagement. So it's really everywhere you go, people will soon tire if you just are constantly going, I'm an amazing artist, buy my album, or do this, or go, and I go, okay, I don't want to know. You want to kind of get to know either an artist or a composer. So like there are some composers I follow, and you know, they maybe won't share everything about their family, but you know, they'll say something funny. I was like, I was in the park today with my son and I heard a music box that was playing Bach's first, you know, Goldberg variation. And so it's a funny kind of personal message. It's still about music, but you feel like you're knowing the person, and you find much more engagement with audiences and interest in that, mixed in with a little bit of promotion, but you've got to have that balance. And that's why it can be so tough. And that's why, you know, with some rules like, you know, tweeting so many times a day or being on Facebook or sending so many posts, maybe don't necessarily follow those rules, but maybe find a nice balance of how you can share something that's more truthful to you as an artist and you as a person, rather feeling that you have to promote all the time, and get that right balance. And then you'll find you'll get more of an audience that stays, or retention. But you know, as I said, it might not always be about social media. It might be about newsletters and things like that. So maybe you use those platforms, or just focus on one where your audience likes to be, and just work with that because it suits you as an artist. So I mean, one thing I would say from others social media things that I've talked about, don't feel you have to be across everything unless you just are someone who loves social media as a whole. If you find that it's onerous and it's a chore, maybe pick one or two which you gravitate more to naturally, and experiment with that and try that and see how people engage with you on that platform, and maybe potentially build your audience there.
Naomi, could I just ask if anybody who's still remaining on this discussion has used TikTok or Twitch, or even in a minor way? Just, yeah, no? Yeah, that's it.
I've used Twitch, but not for music.
Go on, and tell us about it. Tell us about your
Well, I've just used it to watch video games. So.
Okay.
I haven't come across any of those music channels that Naomi was.
No. I mean, I've done a bit of searching myself, and there are. I mean, there's not a huge number, but they're definitely out there, and there are people sitting in their rooms at home studio just playing.
It sounds very interesting.
But
yeah.
My brother-in-law actually got married last week, and they streamed the wedding on Twitch, which was funny.
He's been twitched. So once I come to you, Emma, can I just ask Ansam before he leaves, is it an intuitive platform, did you find, or was it sort of daunting? Is it?
Well, I haven't tried to use it myself to stream anything. It's quite easy to use as a viewer.
Yeah, like Netflix, sort of.
But I haven't tried actually using it as the person live streaming. So.
Well, even that's interesting. Sorry, Emma, you had a question there.
To say about TikTok, we did a live stream of a 15-year-old singer-songwriter about 2 weeks ago, and you know, thought it was great. It's actually Kathy Boyce's daughter from Chapter, Welsh language singer-songwriter, and the video live stream went through Facebook. It went very well. By an hour later, she had 1,000 viewers. So I was congratulating her on the way back to the car, and she said, "Oh, well, I have 10,000 on my TikTok."
Oh, now that's
small high gift, but she does recipe recommendations on how to make flapjacks and things like that on TikTok. So when you're working with younger people, they may be cross-platform for other sides of their talent portfolio. And they may have followers for other reasons. So again, she put a clip of her Facebook on her TikTok to take them back to that.
Brilliant. Yeah. I guess that's what I mean about kind of that personalization. So like I do a lot of talks about kind of strategy as a composer, and like I guess putting yourself out there as a brand. So like this is going to sound silly, but me myself, I work in classical music, and I know a lot of people in the industry. What they most know me for everywhere, and what I put a lot on Twitter and other places, is the fact that I love whiskey. So I'm a member of a whiskey club. I spend a lot of time there. I take a lot of people in the industry there, and that's my unique selling point. And yes, I'm into classical music and I want to share that, but sometimes it can be something else about you that helps kind of, make people realize you're more than just trying to tell that I'm working at a PR agency and a marketing company.
The whole world knows that I practice in my downstairs toilet, and it became a thing. The blog from the bog. But it's funny, I didn't see that coming, but it became a thing that all my photos, because the shelf was the right height, I can fit the laptop on top of the cistern and so on. But it became a bit of a joke, but now it's become a thing.
You're a closet flautist, no?
Oh, very good.
Well, I'd have to go out on a Y as well, something ending in Y, but it would be rugby. So, in the city I'm from. So, I mean, I think that's all like very rounded advice. Thank you, Naomi, because sometimes, like, it's very detailed. The slides I know already will be very useful because they're not bare bones slides. So anybody who missed the beginning, and I know you didn't have time to go through all your case examples, Naomi, but it sounds to me, just having, this is the third of this series, and everybody has had different notes and links to different things, but I think this will be just as useful as the other notes we've had. And the other thing, of course, is Naomi is a consultant herself, so if anybody wants to look her up, contact her. We'll be topping and tailing this video with contact details for Naomi, just like we did for Anselm and Owen and all the others who did presentations for us. And they're all very reasonable people, so if you need a little helping hand and you give them a few bob, they'll be delighted. If anybody else has any questions, Tommy, did you have a question there? You look like a man with a question. No?
No, I didn't. Sorry, no, I'm fine. Thank you. It's been very helpful.
Okay, and well, I'll distribute all these notes, and if there are any more questions, I'm really happy to take them. But likewise, if anybody wants to contact Naomi afterwards, she's ready, able and willing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure this afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Naomi, thank you very, very much on behalf of the Contemporary Music Centre in Ireland. We're delighted to have had your expertise shared with all of us. You gave a very detailed presentation, and I know it's really appreciated by everybody.
Okay, all right. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Sorry we didn't have a glass of whiskey to hand, Naomi, but we know that for the next time, right, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks, folks. Thank you very much for participating.
All right, bye, everyone.
That's the end of this mini-series, but I'll be back with more. Bye.
Bye.